just makes sense. Like, if you don't test, you don't know. And data's the only thing that you can really hang your hat on. Your opinion doesn't mean crap.
Welcome to the Flow Lab, the podcast where we dive deep into the science of building performance and HVAC innovations. Today we bring you another insightful episode aimed to enhance your knowledge and expertise in the field. Joining us are your co-hosts, Ben Walker, co-CEO of Retrotec, and Sam Myers, a renowned building science specialist and Retrotec trainer. Together, they bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to ensure our discussions are both informative and engaging. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to enter the Flow Lab, where we'll explore the world of building performance. Let's get started.
Yeah, so Jake, you and I have known each other for a while now. I think I remember when you really first started diving down the rabbit hole of air tightness testing and incorporating that into your projects. You've been doing this quite a bit. And I think one thing that you're really known for is pushing builders to test multiple times throughout the build, using the blower door as a quality assurance tool, making sure that you have that air tightness number that you want from the beginning and make sure it sticks there at the end as well. So one thing that I'm curious about is, from a client's perspective, when you're talking to homeowners about this, is it something that they ask for? Did they ever come across it on the internet and ask for it? Or is it something that you're constantly having to educate them on?
Yeah, I would say that when we first got started, it was entirely just us pushing. And now in the last 3 or 4 years, we get a lot of potential clients. Even if they didn't know that we put stuff online beforehand, by the time we have our second or third conversation, they've consumed some of our online content. And therefore now they're a lot more informed as to why a leaky house would be a bad thing. Or uncontrolled leaks, unforeseen leaks would be a challenge to health and comfort. It's also something I preach to them about in our initial meetings, because we talk a lot about health and comfort. And so we now are getting clients that are like, so when do we do our first blower door test? We have a client that attended a blower door test recently. Like, he was super interested, super motivated to see what we had done. Thank goodness it was great numbers, so that we didn't look like idiots after we preached about it for so long. So that would have been a real embarrassment if he showed up and we were like, okay, there's a 10-inch hole somewhere in this building. We have to find it. So it's flipped for us. And I think that's a great thing, because that means that the clients are doing their research. They're finding all of our online content. It's the other reason that I push people to put content online about how you're the expert, because you should know more about the process than the person you're building the house for. They don't do this every day. So as long as you look like you know more than they do, that's a good thing for your business.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So that client that came out, was that the first blower door test?
That was actually the final blower door test.
Okay.
And we knew pretty close what the number was going to be like. So it was 3 of 3. And that house, I believe, tested at just under 0.5 ACH 50.
So you test 3 times throughout the build.
We do. Yeah.
At what points do you do that?
Yeah. So it's not that we want to charge for a blower door test 3 times, because we don't necessarily charge them for it. Most of the time it's project manager and myself fiddling and trying to figure out what's wrong with the building. But we test before it's too late, when you start covering things up. So as soon as we can test the envelope, that's the first time we test it. So most of the time that's pre-installation. And then depending on how complicated the house is, post-installation or post-drywall, just to make sure that we didn't screw something up and miss it. And then we generally test, if it's a municipality that doesn't do blower door testing, we test on our way out the door. If it's one that does requires us to have third-party verification, we test the day before they come, just so that we know what the number is before they get there, just to verify. Still, you're constantly poking new holes in the building, even if you don't want to be. And so we may as well verify that we haven't screwed it up. I think, and I misquote it, I'm sure I'm misquoting it, but Coda Wayno from Building Science Corp says, like, your opinion without any data is nothing but your opinion. And that means it means nothing. So if you don't have the data to say, well, we know that we have, 300 CFM worth of leakage on this building, but that's it, and that gets us to a really great number, then we know we built a tight house. Otherwise, we just went, well, these things have worked before.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, what's some of like the common problem areas that you discover along the way?
I would say that we are very lucky that since 2017, when we started blower door testing, we haven't had one not meet our expectations. So we write our scope of work for one ACH 50 or below, and we haven't had a single house not be below that one ACH 50 mark. And
That's
so
awesome.
our common problems aren't, common problems that maybe other people see. Our common problems are total, like we forgot to seal that one thing that we did at the last minute before we were about to close up the envelope. It's not, oh, it's always dryer vents are leaky or ERV is leaky or the front door is leaky. It's, oh crap, we had one thing that's on the list still and you didn't do it. I would say the biggest thing that I find quite amusing, because I was looking at notes from a couple blower door tests, the biggest thing that we screw up when it comes to the blower door test is forgetting to fill drains because nobody lives there. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, you have a floor drain. That's the problem, which is not really a problem in the grand scheme of things, right? Like it's going to get taken care of. But I will tell you that one of the really interesting things that we found a year ago was one of our project managers and I were talking about the ability to just use sill sealer as our air control layer between our plate and our concrete. So doing nothing to the face. And he said, how about we finish the entire envelope, we get it to our second blower door test, and then we tape that. So we had drywall in this house. We did a blower door test and we were at, 0.9 ACH 50. It's a 1,1200 square foot house, really small house. And he went around and taped the outside, and we ran another blower door test like 4 hours later. And it reduced 30% of our leakage. Like it cut 30% off of that. And I was like, there you go. That's not working. It's not helping. And then we have to do something different than seal sealer there because it's simply not enough. And so it was really informative to play and be like, okay, well, what if we leave this unsealed? What if we leave this unsealed? What do we get there? I think that was like our biggest epiphany moment in the last couple of years, is like how substantial that leakage is.
Yeah, that's a lot of times I'll see, like living in the Southeast, we have a lot of vented attics, and I'll see builders use seal on the top plates. They'll tack it up around the top plates, and I've tested them before with smoke, like they leak, but it's better than nothing. So, I mean, I get it. Like it's easy. You don't have to worry about, you can put it up days before. You don't have to worry about it drying out, but it's not the best.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's interesting. 30% is huge.
Yeah. And, under a blower door test, the whole building operates under equal pressure. Like it's pressurizing the entire envelope equally. So 30% is 30% of all the total possibilities. But in the real world, when we're not pressurizing the building, that's our lowest infiltration point. So that's going to be one of our highest points of pressure, because that and the ceiling on the second floor are the two, furthest from each other, experiencing the greatest pressure differential. So like 30% on our blower door test is potentially less than what it would be in the real world, because if we had leaks at windows or if we had something at waist height or chest height in the building, that's experiencing less pressure under normal operation.
Yeah,
so like
for
it
stack
could
effect,
be more than 30. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you do the top of the building? Do you encapsulate the attics? Do you ever deal with vented attics? Have you thrown that away entirely?
Yeah, we're really lucky that it's not too terribly difficult to dig where we live. So we do have a lot of basements.
Yeah.
And we're just not a conditioned attic market in both Columbia, our home office, and Kansas City, our second office. Neither one is a conditioned attic thing. So we get to do super simple vented attics. We get to just air seal on our lid most of the time. A lot of what we do are truss assemblies. So what we'll do is we'll have our trusses engineered so we don't have to build interior partitions, which, we build barns that have 80-foot wide clear spans, things like that. And then we put the trusses 4 feet apart when we do that, or 8 feet apart. So It's not a big bump on our truss budget. Most of the time, they really don't even care. It's the same price. So we'll frame exterior walls, the envelope, and then we'll turn a piece of 3/4 sheathing or Sega's Myrex, which is one of their like flexible smart vapor control membranes, from our zip sheathing on the exterior wall over the top plate, set trusses, and then we'll either use Myrex or zip system on the ceiling. We actually have 2 projects going right now that are just full zip ceilings, full zip lids. And then everything inside that is inside the envelope, and all of the truss space is outside the envelope. It's just a little simpler to do it that way for our market. If we had people claiming that they wanted to use that space, they wanted to be up there, we can do a sealed attic, and then we might explore the idea of doing Monopoly framing, which, if you've ever looked at a Monopoly house, like an actual house from the game, it has overhangs on it beforehand. It's not that simple pentagon shape that kids draw in kindergarten. So I hate that term. I know that term is from the 90s, but whatever. Whoever did that doesn't know how to play Monopoly.
I'm gonna have to go look now.
Yeah. As soon as I heard Reisinger say it the first time, I was standing next to him the first time I heard him say it, and I said, "You do realize Monopoly houses have overhangs on them?" And he was like, "Well, not on the front and the back."
If you read the appropriate angle like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we could easily do that assembly. We easily could also just connect to our spray foam in the attic and use that as an air control membrane if we had to. We probably wouldn't. We probably would go the Myrex up and over through our frame. But it gets more complicated. And like it or not, especially in a basement market, we don't want to put stuff up there that people have to service. We don't want to put people, the majority of our clients are building the last house they're going to live in, even when they're young. We have some clients right now that are 15 years younger than me that are about to build their final house. And I don't know how you could plan that far ahead. I don't know where I'm going to be in 6 years. But you don't want to be 80 years old and carrying stuff to the only storage space that we've been built in the attic. Maybe that's not that different than doing it in the basement, but a lot of our basements are walkouts where you could drive around back, or you could walk it down a long hill rather than steep stairs carrying stuff. Like, it's a different thing. And so we have the luxury of not conditioning that extra space either. So.
Yeah, I really like your plan for addressing the top, because that's usually where a lot of builders get hung up when they're trying to get a low number. Just because if you're just using the drywall and the ceiling as your air barrier, then it's just riddled with holes, and it's really hard to go back and fix it.
Yeah, especially if you've ran plates first too. I had a YouTube comment in the last couple weeks. Somebody was like, "Well, look, the way you're proposing doing this with the Myrex and then strapping it with 2x4 is like, that's super wasteful. Don't you know that you can just do drywall and latex paint?" And I was like, "Well, let's back up a minute. The latex paint is not a required part for it to be an air control membrane. Like, so if you're going to make that argument, which is the way I did it at my personal house, was drywall and ceiling. Let's just say drywall, because when you start adding in other layers, it gets confusing to people." And then I got a comment back about how the latex paint is now your moisture barrier. And I was like, I'm not sure if you understand how latex paint works. And I'm building vented attics. I don't care if that's vapor open,
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, like the homeowners that are educated on blower door tests and stuff, like are they just like, you feel like just looking on your website and stuff, or like how do you think they're finding out about it these days?
I feel like if we have clients that are educated about air leakage, it's 3 places, and it's because they've been looking at our content, because they've been looking at Steve Basic content, or they've been looking at Matt Reisinger content. And I don't know if that's just because the 3 of us are larger voices on the Build Show Network, which I don't know anybody else's numbers, so I don't know.
Right.
But that's where it comes from a lot. And it's easy to find after I've shared my content with you and said, like, hey, if you want to learn about how we build houses, you should check out our YouTube channel or Build Show Network or my Instagram. And I provide people links because I want them to go look, because all I do is talk about what I believe is the right way to build a house in our market. Yeah. And so it's very easy from our stuff to stumble upon Steve because he's in a lot of the videos. And then if you're aware of Steve and I at that point, your algorithm's eventually going to send you to Matt, I would assume. So it's nice that when people get information from the three of us, it generally is correct. And I don't have to debunk it, because there are certainly other sources online that have good reputations where I'd be like, it doesn't exactly work like that. They're kind of misguided on how they said that, or I wouldn't have said it that way. I will tell you that I was with Stephanie Daly all last week. Stephanie builds it on Instagram at IBS. We walked around, I think, all 3 days together. And she was telling me that she has a couple clients that have come to her from Build Show Network stuff, and they also watch other people's stuff. And she was like, yeah, she brought me something from you. And I wanted to be like, yeah, but it snows a lot here, and we're a heating climate, and it's a different thing, and we don't do it that way. So I get that sometimes too, is I get well, yeah, but that's in Texas, and in Texas, they don't have a basement, and that's why they have to do that with the attic. And here's
different
the problem
climate
with
challenges.
that. Yeah. And so regionality can be a problem when people find stuff online too.
Yeah, that's like where we are, we don't have basements. We're right on the coast, so our water table's super shallow. So we just don't have a good place to put mechanical systems. It either goes in a vented crawl or a vented attic. And I think a lot of home builders here just get frustrated with trying to do, like, they try to dig through the rabbit hole of home performance and then try to figure out with mechanicals. They just throw their shoulders up a lot, because, like, well, where do we put this stuff? And it's a lot of the times for us, it's just, you got to encapsulate the attic. That's really the only space that you have to put things. So,
or we have
that's
one
a climate
going
thing for us.
We have one going right now that is a slab on grade in Kansas City. And Isaac, the project manager, went to the truss manufacturer and sat down with their engineer, went through all the drawings, and we have plenums in every single truss to get where we need to go. We have one plenum that is perpendicular to the trusses, so it's a bump up in the trusses, an upward notch, if you would. And then when you're trying to go parallel with the trusses, you just go between them. And we just push our air control layer up. That's why this one happens to be zip, is because there's so many plenums. It was going to be a lot of hard work anyway, and it didn't make sense to use Myrex like we normally do and zip. And so, like, we have these what look like really odd cutouts that feed over top of all of our interior partition top plates, but we can get mechanicals from one end of the house to the other. We can get dehume lines in those same things. The challenge is you have to know that you're going to do that beforehand, which means it needs to be incorporated in the design. On this one, we were having a hard time making it work, and Isaac was like, yeah, the truss designer, she's telling me that if we make it wider than this section, then we're not going to have enough insulation R value left above it because of this flat porch roof detail or this low slope porch roof detail. And he said, so what I told her was, let's make this one the minimum size it needs to be, and then we'll shift the next one over 2 inches and it'll grow a little, and then we'll shift the next one over. So yeah, we ordered 15 different trusses when they should have been one common truss. And the truss guys, the guys that are actually nailing it together, are frustrated. But now we have a plenum that spreads out once the ducts go through a choke point, and we have the ample ability to feed conditioned air on the bottom side of our air control layer and on the bottom side of our insulation layer. So they're inside, you just can't see them.
Nice.
Oh, that's really cool.
Tons of planning though. Like, Isaac has 4 days of figuring this out with the truss manufacturer and with the architect and with our mechanical engineer.
Yeah. So speaking of mechanicals, I know another challenge where, builders are trying to do things right. You gotta get subs that are kind of on board with you. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most challenging ones is HVAC, because, once you have a good design for your house, how airtight you want it to be, it's super important that your mechanical systems match, that you don't oversize heat pumps and things like that. For a builder that might be starting out, kind of going down this road, trying to build more high performance homes, what kind of questions would you ask an HVAC contractor to try to vet a good one?
First and foremost, have you done any low load homes before? Have you actually done a home where a 6,000 BTU mini split, ductless mini split, is going to be plumbed into a room, and it's going to need to cycle down to whatever they can go to, 2,000 BTUs? Have you done any homes like that before? Have you dealt with an ERV? Have you dealt with dehumes? In my market, we're mixed humid. We're not particularly humid, but the dehumidifier does a ton for comfort when we're talking about low load homes, because our HVAC is our H and AC is not going to dehumidify, and so the first question is, have you done this before? And I realize that every person I've ever hired has done everything when they interview for the job.
Of course.
Nobody's willing to say, I don't know what cabinets are, The next one is, are you willing to work with a mechanical engineer? Because there are so many of them that want to specify the equipment and terminations and do the manual J themselves. And that always is a problem in my market, at least, because we have so few installers that are they're so used to putting mechanical systems in people that we're not even competing with homes, in spec homes that are leaky, that are poorly built. The Kansas City market still has a ton of homes being built with 2x4 walls and Tyvek directly to the studs, and then T111 siding on the outside of it. I'm sorry, but that is a different level of energy efficiency than a 2x6 wall with Zip R9 and 0.6 ACH 50 air leakage. And so if you're doing those homes every day, this thing's going to be a pain in the butt for you. And are you going to deal with it? And you're not going to be qualified to do the manual J. So I should back up. We work with 2 mechanical engineers most of the time. One is Allison Bales, Energy Vanguard in Atlanta. It doesn't get any better than these guys. They know low load homes amazingly well. And then the second one is Ross Trathui with TE2 Engineering. Like, we're talking about one of the best mechanical engineering firms on the planet, potentially. If you are going to disagree with the plans that we get from Allison or from Ross, chances are you number one, don't know what you're doing. And number two, you're going to be a pain in my ass, for lack of a better way of saying it. Sorry for the language. But we don't want that. We want a team member with buy-in. I always talk about, when I'm talking to the carpenters or the subs on our team, I explain why we're doing something, not what we're doing. Because if you understand the why, I should be able to get buy-in. And the first thing that happens when we give a mechanical design to a contractor that doesn't want to do it is, we're not going to get buy-in from you. Yeah. You're probably off the list then.
Yeah.
It's tough. And I remember the first time that I sold a mini split for an addition that we were doing. And then when the guys showed up, they were like, well, where's the hole in the wall? I was like, what hole are you needing in the wall? And they're like, well, the unit slides through the wall like at a hotel room. And I was like, that's not the mini split that I asked for you to provide at all. And they're like, well, this is the same thing and it's cheaper. I was like, that's nowhere near the same thing.
It's a PTAC unit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
And I was like, this is not going to work out. You guys are going to have to send that thing back. And they're like, well, we ordered it based off what you were wanting. I was like, nope. Not only that, it's not even the same brand that I had specified. Don't try that.
Just bust out the Sawzall.
When he said, where's the hole in the wall, I had no idea what I was in for. And 10 minutes later, it was one of the most frustrating things I've ever had on a job site. And he was like, well, we just make sure we slope the pan to outside so it'll drain. And I was just like, oh, you got it. You're wanting me to cut an 18-inch by 3-foot hole in my envelope. So, yeah, that's the market that we're still in. There are a few high-performance builders, people that do similar things to what we do, both in Columbia and in Kansas City, that are helping to drive the market forward. But the best thing you can possibly do with mechanicals is work with the same subcontractor every single time if they're willing to buy in. That working with them over and over and over again, they start to learn, hey, I can't just drill holes in the envelope. Hey, I need to make sure that we have certain CFM to each room rather than just we have a duct in there. It's changing. It's better than it used to be. It's tough. It's one of the more difficult subcontractors. And when we look at
for sure
health and comfort and offering control to our clients, I always say it's water, air, thermal, and mechanical system with your windows. Those things together manages the whole building. And guess what? The only one I'm not in charge of is mechanicals. I'm in charge of it because I'm the builder, but I'm not the one doing the work. Our team's not the ones doing the work. I didn't get to pick out the exact unit unless they're good and they want our opinion. So I don't remember the last time an HVAC guy asked for my opinion, though.
So for new builders that are, well, not new builders, but builders who are trying to get introduced to doing things right, because I talk to them a lot when I'm on the road. We were just at IBS. I had some that had a lot of like introductory questions and things like that. And when you kind of got into this, what were some of the things that you wish you knew, or maybe wish you would have approached a little bit differently, or what's some advice that you would have for a builder that's already building homes but trying to turn that corner?
The first and most unrealistic piece of advice I can give is apply all these things to a personal home and build it and use that as your proof of concept. I know that absolutely almost no one can just go, okay, well, I can do that. I'll just build myself a house that I wasn't planning on building.
Sure.
But that was like the highest level of understanding that I got for myself. It happened to be time for me to build a house for my family. We were growing. It was a good opportunity. And I have learned more from building that house for myself, because I did almost everything except for like the HVAC myself. And so that process, and then getting to understand what my failures were, what my successes were in the building, that has been a huge bump forward in my knowledge base. Outside of that, clients will turn over electric bills. So if you've done something that you think is going to give the clients lower electric bills, ask for the data. Just say, I'm trying to verify that our what we've done is correct, is amazing, is performing the way we promised it would. And then the most basic is pick one thing on every job. Pick one thing to change your method and try something that's going to offer you better results, or what you think are going to be better results on every single project. And when I say that, so many people go, yeah, but I can't just put Zip R on that house because the clients don't want it. Maybe. Or maybe you could find the correct way to educate them on why the code has changed and is now asking for continuous exterior insulation in most markets or in most climate zones, and have a discussion from a science standpoint with them about why it should be there, and tell them that that's your standard, and just include it in your initial pricing. When you include all the things that some people see as an upgrade in your initial ballpark pricing, you don't have to go back and turn them into add-ons. And that took me a long time to figure out, because I paid for the Zip R the first time we did it. I paid my sub at the time, our framing sub, a little bit extra to frame 24 inches on center and do all of our air sealing, even though it was less wood. Like, they were installing and handling less stuff, so it should have been cheaper, but I paid the upgrade instead of charging the clients for it. So that I had the data to go, look, it works. Look, I can prove to you that this wall is perfectly fine, perfectly straight, perfectly structurally sound, and now next time you can see that it costs less to do. So let's do that. So I guess it's kind of threefold there. Yeah. If you can afford to add it on your dime the first time to prove to everybody else involved in the process that it's correct. And if you can't, include it in your initial scope so that you don't have to sell it as an upgrade, because everybody views this as an upgrade that needs an ROI. And that's the exact opposite of what it is. We don't ask for ROI on square footage or on hardwood floors or our countertops. We do what we want. Well, if they are educated as to what the correct way to build a house, the thing that's going to lead to optimal comfort or health, then that's what they'll want, and you don't have to try to sell it. It's now I just have to try to not mess it up.
Yeah, I think one thing about the ROI that isn't figured in, one of the points of building an airtight house is to make it last longer, right? And if we don't take that to heart and we don't do that, then we start getting callbacks, right? And so for the builder, if you're able to do this and not have to go back to the house, I mean, have you seen that in your own work, or is that something that you talk with other builders about, like the less callbacks you have, after building a tight house?
Yeah. So it's a little hard to quantify, right? Like, if you're doing a good job before and you were doing the code minimum, there's chances that you didn't have problems, right? Because if you don't do most of these things, they're just elevating your risk. It doesn't mean that you will have condensation in the wall. It doesn't mean that you will have indoor air quality problems. It just means you have a higher risk of having those things happen. And
Sure.
so I'm very lucky that we have been incredibly hands-on with all of our projects. We have in-house carpentry since we started going after things that were higher performing, that were better for health and comfort, that we have very little callbacks. And the callbacks we have are like, one of my project managers was in my office before I jumped on with you guys. And he was like, there are 4 nail pops in this stairwell. He was like, I don't understand how we're getting nail pops in that stairwell. And I was like, yeah, but be happy there are nothing but 4 little nail heads showing in the drywall that we're going to repaint the stairwell. That's our callback for a custom home that we spent 1.5 years on.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I'll take that any day of the week. We set that kind of money aside. As long as we don't get a phone call that says we have a window leak and the house is 2 years old, I'm more than happy to repaint a stairwell because you can see a couple nail heads that we probably missed while we were there. It's probably not that they're pops. It's probably that we did a bad job of checking that stairwell because it was up high,
Sure.
So I would say that without data, I do feel like we have less callbacks than we ever have.
Yeah, and probably a lot less stressful too to not have to worry about that. I was talking with a lot of local home builders around here. They're just constantly having to revisit when things go wrong.
We don't have those issues. I'm very proud to say.
Yes, I catch a common theme that you try to make data-driven decisions.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Like if you're just guessing, I tell you what, I was at JLC probably closing in on 10 years ago. And Steve Basic and I happened to be standing in a booth for an ERV manufacturer. And we're just, talking with a guy that we both knew that worked there. And this builder came walking by and he said, "What do you guys do?" And they started explaining an ERV. And he said, "Well, I don't need one of those. I build really tight houses." And Steve leaned forward and was like, "How tight?" He was like, "Tight." He's like, "What kind of blower door score do you get?" And the guy was like, "What's a blower door?" And I remember that guy's face to this day with Steve lecturing him about, you have no idea how tight of a house you build. Like, you guys know how Steve can be. He can be a little Marine Corps informed, pushy about things, especially when he knows he's going to be right. And I just sat there and listened to that and thought, how can he possibly know anything about whether or not he builds a quote unquote tight house?
Yeah.
This relies on the visual inspection, like the.
Yeah, like he's just walking around going, "I don't see any holes. It must be good." And so like that conversation and watching Steve lay into that guy, I just was like, man, how much stuff do I think we do correctly that I have no idea whether or not we do?
Yeah.
All the way down to spray water testing window installations. At my personal house, Steve was the architect, and Steve happened to be visiting to look at another project with another client. And I said, "Hey, do you want to spray the windows at my house?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And out of the 35 units on our house, I think 6 of them leaked. And talk about take a beating when the architect is standing there going, "What the hell's wrong with you guys? Why did you think that would work? Do you want to spray them all again? Because I bet the rest of them are going to leak too."
Man.
And I had done the work myself. It was myself and our most diligent carpenter that's ever worked with me, and we still had made mistakes. And I was like, we definitely have windows that we've installed in the last 6 months for clients that were not installed properly. That it's a matter of time before I find out, sort of thing. Now, I haven't had any of those phone calls, so I'm very lucky that maybe it was just I did a bad job at my house. But if you don't test, you don't know. And data's the only thing that you can really hang your hat on. Your opinion doesn't mean crap.
Yeah, window
What,
testing is rare for residential. We usually only see that in commercial, so that's really cool. You guys are doing that.
I was just curious about your setup when you guys did the testing. What you have spray
garden hose.
racks and stuff? Yeah, garden
No,
hose. And
we can't afford a
just-
spray rack. We spent all our money on a blower door.
Oh, well, good choice though. That's a good choice.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So yeah, we can't afford a spray rack, and it's more water than what the windows should ever see, right? Like us spraying it with a hose from 5 feet away for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's more water than it's ever going to get. Most of our designs, be it with Steve or with other architects, are fairly conservative design wise, which means we have overhangs and our windows are in protected situations. So I'm not particularly worried about it. But if you don't know, you don't know.
And when you were spraying it, did you have a negative pressure on the house, like to simulate wind?
So at my personal house, when Steve and I tested, the blower door was not available. They were using it somewhere else. And then when I made all the repairs and after Steve left, I used negative pressure. I put it at like negative 75 and ran it while I was doing everything. And we didn't get any more leaks. And
nice.
One of our very nerdy neighbors was like, hey, we should get one of those car wash things and put some Dawn dish soap in it and see if we can make it leak. And I was like, absolutely not. The rain is not gonna have a surfactant in it, and that will make it leak in no time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like that will make the windowsills themselves leak. So yeah. My neighbors took great fun in watching me hose down a brand new building.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, my neighbors are wondering what I'm doing about half the time too. What is this red thing you keep putting up in your door? Yeah.
I tried recently to one of my kids was watching me wash dishes, and they asked, holding the bottle of Dawn dish soap, like, hey, it doesn't say anything about germs on here. And I was like, that's because it's actually not a cleaner, it's a surfactant. And I started trying to explain how it makes the surface so slippery that the stuff slides off of it. And my 13-year-old was like, nerd, and then walked out of the room. And I was like, maybe it is just me. Maybe it's just me in our house.
My kids just walk out immediately. They don't even don't even stick around for the explanation.
It was his question. And I was like, dude, it was like I'm raising a household of bullies.
That's all. Where's the detail on the windows where they was leaking? What did get missed?
So my personal house, we have European flangeless windows, and we decided to face seal. So all 4 sides would be taped closed because they're all really well protected. Like there's like 2 or 3 windows that don't have great overhangs, ranging from 2 foot to 5 foot overhangs. And I told Steve, like, why don't we just tape these on the outside face and then stuff insulation in on the inside and save taping one face? Because normally we would tape, a horseshoe, head, and jambs, and then leave the bottom open, but then also have to tape the inside. And so the outside was for managing water and the inside's managing air. And I was like, I can save a trip around the building by not taping on the inside and just move everything to a face sealed system, which most manufacturers are okay with. Flange windows or whatever, they almost all have 2 install methods, one leaving the sill open, one leaving it closed. And our transition from jambs to sill, the tape couldn't make that geometry. So we had 2 pieces of tape with an overlap, and it was almost exclusively overlaps and those joints. And so we had to go back through and smear a little sealant over top of it. And it resolved the issue, but man, that was frustrating to fail in the first place and then have to make a whole nother trip around the building. Cause you got to do it to the ones that aren't leaking too. Cause it just means they are not leaking yet. And we know what a problem is. So going around to, 1,000 corners is what it felt like at the time, and resealing every single one of them. So thankfully it was my house and I learned from it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about the build show for a minute. You've been a contributing builder there for a few years now. Where is the best place that a home builder who's wanting to learn more can find content that you're putting up on how to do things right?
Primary source is buildshownetwork.com. You're right. We've been putting up content there since late 2019. I think I was looking the other day. I think I've missed 2 weeks worth of content in that
Oh
amount of
man.
time.
Wow.
So
What a
we're
letdown.
talking a couple hundred videos there that are all focused on. We think this is the correct way to do things. Some of my videos are building science, some of them are customer service, and some of them are business. But the overwhelming majority are like, hey, look at this assembly. This is why we're doing this assembly. This is why this matters. And this is why you should consider doing something that's accomplishing the same idea on your job site. And it's a great spot for learning from others too. Like, I find value in what everybody else is putting up as well. And so there are like 14 weekly contributors, the experts, and then they've instituted a program called Pro, which is them republishing stuff from other sources from a few key people. And then we also have podcasts up there too. So like even the Unbuild It podcast that I do with Steve Basic and Peter Yost talking about building science and the business of building, it publishes there twice a month as well. So there is a plethora of knowledge on that site. And at this point, I don't see how you would ever be able to catch up and watch everything on that site, because at minimum, there's like 16 videos a week from all over the country, from, HVAC and plumbing to electrical to framing content to how do you charge for cost plus.
And all that content's free on there.
And it is non-paywall content. We're very lucky that sponsors fund the site, and the overwhelming majority of those sponsors say, go and do what you do, and we're happy to be involved. It's really great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know that ever since I remember it really kind of blowing up during COVID. The build shows really helped put a spotlight on airtightness, the importance of it in houses, and how to test. And so really appreciate all that you've contributed to kind of help drive that, because we've definitely seen a shift in the industry ever since that train really started rolling. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for all you've done to help provide that education, because a lot of those questions come back to us when they start digging into it. So.
Well, I look at everything I put up there as, I wish that someone would have told me this sooner. And almost everything I know, I learned from someone else. So It's all about sharing. It's all about being able to find the knowledge. And I'm sure not every video I've put up is 100% correct now that I've learned more. But there's a pretty darn good base.
Somebody will tell you in the comments.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but they tell you in the comments even when you're not wrong. But that's actually a really interesting point. When I speak publicly, I encourage people to get on Instagram if they're not on Instagram, because our industry for Instagram is overwhelmingly positive. And you can't say that about Facebook or YouTube, but Instagram somehow has managed to stay an incredibly positive place. Now, searching is difficult. You have to just find people that you like their content and view their content every day. But I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a more positive environment for an industry than Instagram is for the home building side of things.
Any hashtags that you'd recommend or anything?
I don't. You just have to get on there and start looking for stuff. I guess I would say hashtag long live our buildings, because Steve tags everything with that.
Nice.
So there's quite a few people that tag that now.
Yeah, the algorithm will do its thing.
Yeah. Or you'll look at kittens for hours.
And so you mentioned your podcast earlier, the Unbuild It podcast. You and Steve and Peter have been doing that for a while, and that's now under the umbrella of the Build Show, correct?
Yeah, so they are I think the correct term would be republishing only. You can still get it through all of your regular formats, Spotify, Apple Podcast, those sorts of things. YouTube, you can still get it on our YouTube channel. But it was easy for us to say, yeah, if you guys want to put it up, you guys can put it up, and we'll gain a couple thousand followers per episode, because there are people who only consume content through Build Show Network. Like that's their go-to spot. And so it's nice to catch a few people that we wouldn't normally catch. And the added benefit for us is they let us use their studio. And so we no longer have to record at my office, which is quite nice for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, we've been putting that out since early 2020. So, coming up on 6 years.
Nice. Well, congrats. Yeah, that's a good streak.
Hopefully it keeps going. I learn more from sitting at that table with Peter and Steve and literally just debating ideas. Or what happens is then we stop recording and then Peter says one more thing and I'm like, that was the smartest thing of the whole day.
Yeah,
Why didn't you say that while we're, so that's, I mean, I really have a lot of my knowledge base to really just directly attribute to those two. I became friends with Steve in 2013. Not long after that, maybe 2015, I spent the whole week at IBS with Steve, and he introduced me to Mike Girton and to Peter. And I spent time walking around. Like, if you could pick 3 monsters in the industry that know everything, that are also the best at sharing knowledge and answering questions. The number of times, when I first met Steve in 2013, that I asked questions that I now look back on that and go, man, that was a dumb question. And Steve answered it without being a jerk. Like, he was just like, oh, it's this, this, and this. The understanding that I've gained from them is greater than just about anybody in the industry, if not greater than everybody else in the industry. Those guys and Mike Girton have been amazing. They put up with all my questions, and I feel like I accelerated my knowledge. I got a PhD in 2 years from them, which it would have been way harder to figure out on my own. So that's when I say, like, I'm putting out stuff that I wish somebody would have told me earlier. Had I been friends with Pete and Steve and Girton in the early 2000s, we would have been here quicker.
Awesome. That's probably just like your curiosity and not afraid to ask some dumb questions once in a while, whatever.
Yeah,
that's a really good point, Ben. Actually, I live by like the mantra that I don't care if I asked an embarrassing question. If I don't know the answer, why wouldn't I be more embarrassed about not knowing the answer than asking a dumb question? Like, somebody has to say it for you to understand it most of the time. You're going to learn from other people. Find someone who has gray hair and just continue asking the dumb questions. I think it's part of why the podcast works so well, because I when I brought up the idea of us doing a podcast, I was like, look, I will play the dumb builder. And if you guys are talking about something that I don't know or that I think most people don't know, I have no problem being the one to not know on the podcast, so that I'm asking the questions, so that I'm going, well, hold on, explain that. What do you mean by vapor drive doesn't happen if there's no air leakage? Explain that again, things like that. And so it's a really good format for living your life, is to not be afraid to ask the question.
Because if you have the question, somebody else does too. So
yeah,
it's a good chance anyway.
I have no problem being the dumb one in the room. I'd rather be the dumb one than the smartest one.
Out of things you've seen recently and everything, any like building materials, techniques, equipment out there that you see on the horizon that's like has your curiosity up that you're excited about seeing come down the road?
I think one of the most interesting things is that you're seeing a whole swath of products that are multitaskers coming on the market, like what Zip-R is. Zip-R is water, air, and thermal, and technically vapor control in one product, in one system from one manufacturer. And walking around the Build Show or the IBS recently, it felt like every single booth had a multitasker. And not like they did 10 years ago, where nobody understood what their multitasker actually was going to do. They had real building science departments where, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, not to call out one manufacturer, Dow Jones or Dow Chemical. Yeah, they made insulation, but I don't think they really understood what they were doing with that insulation or implications of how it's installed. And now they're coming out with products that are kind of multitaskers. Like, they had a structural sheathing with insulation. And it's like, okay, that's not a thing that I would have expected from you guys. And when I started asking questions, they grabbed someone whose name tag said building science on it. Like, nice. Those are the things that I think are, now whether or not they just wrote that in there in Sharpie, and the person doesn't actually understand building science.
To be determined,
yeah. But like, yeah, that's not a product that I'm going to use. Probably it's, I don't like the idea of putting that many, like it's just chemicals for your exterior wall. It's polycarbonate and XPS. But the idea that they're going after the multitask market, that there was companies at IBS that had a product that was to help you skip multiple steps of stucco that also counted as a WRB. Like there's some things like that, yeah, it might not be something we'll ever use, but it's really interesting to see that people are starting to understand that building science and the physics of how the building operates is much more important than they gave it credit in the 90s and 2010s. It's a different world.
Great to see. Yeah, it's great to see.
Refreshing.
Yeah.
Well, any final words of wisdom that you would share for any of those that were maybe in your shoes, maybe 15 years ago?
I would push the data side of things. And while this is Retrotec's podcast, I would say buy your own blower door, because our blower door tests are $600 a time if we want a sub to come out and do it. And you can pay for your blower door and a few extra blower doors. And it's really nice to have the equipment to do the testing that you need. And you two didn't pay me to say that even.
Not yet, anyway. Not yet.
It's been the single most useful and informative tool that we've bought in the last 15 years. It really has. And the knowledge that we've gained from it helps us compete in the market in a substantial way.
And hopefully a tool that's like not necessarily complicated to use either, right? Like
it's not. My project manager, Brent, can do it. I have to tell Brent to listen.
Yeah, exactly. Wait till the end.
Yeah, that would be my advice, is you have to find a way to understand, to get the data. And without the data, it's just your opinion.
Just guessing it.
Yeah, so I guess next time we'll see you, I guess we'll be at Build Show Live. If I don't see you in the field or somewhere.
JLC?
I don't know if we'll be at JLC.
Okay.
That's a hard one for us to make. We've got a small team. We're always pulled thin in that time of year, but
so Build Show Live then.
Yeah.
So
awesome. When's that happening?
That is September 10th, 11th, 12th, I believe.
Yeah, it's in San Antonio this year.
Oh, yeah. Awesome, man. Right on.
Yeah.
So it'll still be 100 degrees.
Yep.
In September. Yuck. But the convention center is conditioned, so come see us.
Yep. Yeah, awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming. This was great.